Okay, with me today I have Dani Hamilton. She is an FNTP and she specializes in blood sugar regulation and digestion. So excited to have you today. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about today's topic, which is going to be, blood sugar regulation, how we can manage all that, and maybe we can even talk a little bit about digestion and how
Yeah.
that all, affects everything. But first, if you wouldn't mind, maybe giving us a little background and telling us a little bit about your health story and maybe what led you to become an FNTP and what that is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, an FNTP is just a fancy way of saying it stands for Functional Nutritional Therapy Practitioner, but it's a fancy way of saying that I'm a holistic nutritionist. And we don't diagnose or treat anything, but we recognize the body's innate ability to heal. So, I give the example of like if I just cut my hand, I wouldn't have to do anything for my hand to heal, right? It would just immediately start healing. And what we need to do as FNTPs is recognize what the body needs to heal. So if the body's healing really slowly, maybe I'm deficient in zinc, maybe I have too high of blood sugar. And also, we need to do things that get things out of the way that are blocking the body's ability to heal. So this innate healing process is happening inside of our bodies all the time. And sometimes we can kind of lose sight of that. We can think that our body is rebelling on us and our body hates us. I have been there. I have said those things before. So this is all coming from my own experience. But the body is an incredible healing machine. And so if it's not healing, we just need to keep asking, what else do I need? What do I need to take away? What do I need to add in? And your answers are out there. So I like to always share hope and that, things are figure outable and keep searching for your answers. Don't give up on yourself. So my story begins, I guess, in childhood. I was a little bit sicker than the average kid. Nothing extreme, but really, I would say like low immune system, always getting sick, always having ear infections. I think I was really sensitive to a lot of foods that I was eating. And so I got ear infections all the time, had to take antibiotics, which made my gut worse. I had eczema and allergies, and I started to develop really bad seasonal allergies and asthma as I got older into college after I got my tonsils out. I mean, I was sick with strep throat, like just all these things, just you name it. And then when I had these really bad allergies, I was taking 3 prescription medications, 2 inhalers, and I had to get allergy shots. And because I was allergic to so many things, I needed 5 shots at a time. And I gave those to myself every other day. And I kind of forced them to let me take them home. And I asked if they could allow a nurse at a facility I was working with give me the shots because I was going broke from all the copays and I was in doctor's offices. I had sinus infections. I had all these things going on, giving myself these 5 allergy shots every other day in the stomach. I was like, I'm in my early 20s. Like, what the heck is going to happen to me in a few years or in a few decades? This is insane. And no one could tell me why any of this was happening. It was like, it's genetics. And I just wasn't okay with that answer. It just didn't sit right. And at the time I was working as a speech therapist in a skilled nursing facility slash rehab center slash nursing home. People had so many diagnoses. They were so sick and they had even more medications. And I was like, this is not going to be my future. It freaked me out, to be honest, and it
Yeah.
gave me sort of the drive to look into it a little bit more. And so I found the book called The Paleo Solution by Rob Wolf. And
Mhm.
I got rid of all the processed food in my diet essentially and started eating all this real food, got rid of gluten and dairy and stuff like that. And wouldn't you know, all my allergies, my asthma, my sinus infections, everything went away and everything got so much better almost without effort. It was miraculous. Just like I was
Yeah.
talking about how the body just wanted to heal, and as soon as I took
Yeah.
out those barriers, boom, it started healing. But then I had a really stressful year, and all of a sudden I stopped getting my period. I had really bad acne that was, at first it was tied with my cycles, and then it was just all the time. And
Mhm.
then I was gaining weight out of nowhere almost uncontrollably, and no matter what I did I couldn't lose weight. And so my response to that was like, let's just paleo harder and see if this helps. And a lot of the recommendations recommendations for what I thought I had. They were like, take out refined sugar. I'm like, check, did that. Like, don't eat processed food. I'm like, check. So I was really stuck with what I could do. So with the help of Dr. Google, I found out that I had PCOS. This was confirmed by a doctor. And when I said, like, what should I do? I can't lose weight, like, no matter how hard I try. He looked me in the eyes and said, you have to lose weight and you have to take the pill. I was like, I don't
Oh
think
my
you heard what I
gosh.
said. Like, what the heck? So I walked out of there, flipped that guy off, and in my mind. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not taking this pill. This is garbage. He also said that there's no cure for it. And
Oh
here I am
gosh.
living proof that I don't have it anymore. So PCOS, for those who don't know, stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. It is essentially a manifestation of insulin resistance and
Mhm.
some other hormone issues, but it's a collection of symptoms. If you don't have those symptoms anymore, you don't have the disease, right? Like I don't have, it's like I've had a cold. I don't have symptoms of a cold anymore, so I don't have the cold. Same thing with PCOS. People, there's a message out there that it's like this lifelong thing, and I want to debunk that, and I want to tell you that this doesn't have to be for a lifetime. And
Mhm.
when you reverse the root cause of it, which took me a long time to figure out, it's insulin resistance. So
Mhm.
I didn't realize I was trying to affect my sex hormones. I was trying to lower my testosterone and balance my progesterone, and I wasn't making any headway. And then I found out that insulin resistance was at the root of it. And I was like, what the heck is insulin resistance? What do you mean blood sugar? I specifically remember looking through like health books, paleo books, all these things, and skipping over the section that says blood sugar. Like, I'm not diabetic. Oop, skip that
Yeah.
chapter. I don't, it was just like a weird thing. And I specifically remember doing that, but I think it was because blood sugar is hard to understand. It's like all this insulin and like the amount in the blood, like what does it all mean? And so since I didn't understand it, I was like, oh, it doesn't apply anyway. I don't need to know about it. And meanwhile, it was really running the show for me.
Mhm.
And I realized later on that I'm like, okay, if I have insulin resistance and this has to do with my blood sugar, what are these symptoms? Like, do I have any symptoms of this blood sugar stuff? And so I realized that I was a person who couldn't tolerate hunger. For me, hunger felt urgent, it felt intense, it felt like I was getting shaky, I would get hangry, irritable, anxious. It was an unpleasant event. And it
Yeah.
felt like my hunger was like I needed to eat just right then. And so I intuitively would do things to avoid hunger. So I would be someone who grazed. I would be like just walk in the kitchen, just have a little bite of something, but like I wouldn't even have described myself as like a snacker, but I
Mhm.
would just have stuff here and there, a little bit of something just to avoid those blood sugar crashes, which is what it really was. And it
Yeah.
wasn't real hunger. So I would be a person who I didn't know why I did this, but I always ate before I went out to eat because
Oh.
God forbid the meal took too long to come. I was like, well, I
Oh
just need to
wow.
eat a little something. I had a granola bar in my purse. I was always planning, like, okay, where are we going to eat? Like, that was always something on my mind. And then the only time I really felt an actual blood sugar crash was after I had coffee in the morning because the
Oh yeah.
caffeine actually caused a crash in my blood sugar. And then finally, I got a meter and I measured it, and my blood sugar was in the 60s every time I did that. Um, Going for fasting blood work, excuse me, was torture for me. I was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, I hate this. I always feel so bad. And I remember getting in the car after the blood work and almost like stumbling backwards because
Oh
I was
wow.
so lightheaded and so dizzy. And on all those blood tests, my blood sugar was 60 and nobody batted an eye. And that is extremely low. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't feeling good at that level. Like I wasn't, in this great level of ketosis, like, okay, my blood sugar 60, it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
it was a pure sugar burning sort of experience. And so then I went to nutrition school and was able to understand even in more depth how the whole body works together, how to support the foundations of our health, which includes digestion
Mhm.
and blood sugar regulation. And yeah, I just was able to heal myself. And now I teach people how to do the same.
Wow, that's an incredible story, and I can relate a lot to a lot of that stuff. And that's actually what caused me to try and figure out my health is like 6 years ago. I thought I was allergic to sugar because I had all these weird reactions. Just all of a sudden, I always had the digestive stuff I had had for years, But then all of a sudden I had these reactions to sugar where my heart was beating really fast.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure it out because I thought we all needed sugar.
Yeah.
Because I was told at an early age too, I was diagnosed with hypoglycemia
Mm-hmm.
at like 12, and I was made to actually go, I had to leave class, go to the office, drink orange juice. Yeah, that's what I was told. Really
Yeah.
bad, just horrible advice. And
Yeah.
that set me up for, I always thought I needed sugar. So every
Yes.
time I was feeling dizzy, I would get dizzy. And that was the first sign. I was always dizzy as a child. I always had headaches. I was hangry, like you talked about. And
Yes.
it carried into adulthood where I thought I needed sugar. So I would eat candy bar, really unhealthy
Yeah.
stuff. And I remember I was actually working in a pharmacy and I just started having all these strange, like I had a blister on my lip, which I now know was like a sugar,
Mm-hmm.
blister. And I developed candida overgrowth and all that stuff.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can so relate to all this stuff. But I didn't know it at the time either, but I was experiencing a lot of insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started, like you said, I started just eating whole foods, and I was trying to combat the overgrowth of yeast in my body, and then at the same time I was able to manage the sugar, you know, thing
Yeah.
too. Um, so yeah, so let's just dive into it. Can you tell us? Okay, you talked a little bit about what insulin resistance is, but maybe you can tell us a little more about that.
Sure. So insulin's job is essentially to put the sugar inside of the cell so the body can use it as fuel. So when we eat sugar, the body likes to have just about a teaspoon, which is 4 grams of sugar, circulating throughout the blood at all times. This is so the body can have this like quick fuel if it needs it. That's where it feels safe. So we have to, in nutrition stuff, we kind of need to get away from the idea that like, okay, if like high blood sugar is bad, I want mine to be really low. It's like, no, you don't want it to be really low either. There's a lot of this like Goldilocks position, this like happy medium, these happy ranges that we want these things to be in. So we want to avoid that natural human tendency of like, if some is good, more must be better. So in terms of blood sugar, our body likes this happy range. And then if we eat something with carbohydrates or sugar or even lean protein, the the sugar will digest and it will go into our blood. Now that blood sugar number is elevated. The pancreas, if you don't have type 1 diabetes, will sense this and create a hormone called insulin. Insulin kind of acts like a key and it enters into the cell membrane and just sort of opens that lock, and now the glucose can go inside. And so now the glucose can be used for energy or it could be stored as body fat for later. So insulin has a really, really important job. Without that insulin, nothing can get in the cell. But the problem comes when there's too much insulin over too much time. And what happens is our body starts to almost immediately develop resistance to this insulin. And the way I describe insulin resistance or resistance at all is like, let's say I'm listening to my headphones and there's something noisy outside. They start mowing the lawn. So I turn my volume up, and then, the cats are making a lot of noise. I turn the volume up even more. And then someone comes to talk to me. So I pause my music, I take out my headphones. I'm like, what do you need? Blah, blah, blah. Put my headphones back in, press play. What's going to happen? It's going to be like, oh gosh, that's so loud, right? It's going to be super loud because why wasn't it loud before? Because I had developed resistance to this message. Same thing, you walk inside a loud club in your youth and it's super loud at first when you get there. And then by the end of the night, you're dancing in front of the speakers. Again, resistance. You put on a shirt, it has a scratchy tag on it. In a few seconds, you're kind of like, oh, all right, it's fine. You don't feel it anymore. Resistance. So this resistance happens really, really quickly. So now the receptors on the cell are sort of resisting the message that insulin's giving it. It's like they're knocking on the door, but nobody's answering. So now the fuel, the glucose that is in the blood, can't get into the cell because the insulin can't do its job because it's not being sensed that it's there. So now the cells are starving for energy. So you feel really tired, you feel lethargic, you don't feel a lot of energy, and then your body can have an energy crisis. So if this is happening in the brain, we can get headaches, we can feel brain fog, we can feel anxious, we can feel irritable, we can feel all sorts of these neurological symptoms, low energy. And what are we going to want to do? We're going to want to eat more carbohydrates and perhaps caffeine and sugar and something quick fuel because the body feels like it's starving. But really, it's that there's too much insulin that's blocking the body from being able to access different fuel sources, because when insulin is in the body, it's sending a really strong message to store body fat, store fat, store fat. Even if it's not being listened to, it's saying store, 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 store. So we can't be in a fat burning mode at the same time we're in a fat storage mode. So the only way that we can burn fat for fuel, which is our other option of a fuel source besides glucose, we want to be able to switch back and forth between these two. We want to have this metabolic flexibility where we're able to burn sugar. It's going to burn sugar first. And then when that goes away, the insulin levels should go lower. And that should allow the body to create ketones and burn fat for fuel. And so the goal essentially is to lower the insulin levels so that we can burn body fat and our body can get used to this back and forth. We're all born that way. Babies are born in ketosis if they're exclusively breastfed, but we lose this ability because look at the stuff, the garbage that they're selling us and telling us to eat, like eat all these refined carbs. It doesn't matter. Just everything can fit. Like eat processed foods because it's a healthy whole grain. And I'm air quoting over here. Eat 6 small meals. So when we're eating all the time and we're eating carbohydrates all the time and sugar and drinking our calories and drinking the sugar stuff and caffeine, this is just spiking our sugar all day, all the time, which also spikes our insulin all the time. And insulin doesn't go down as fast as sugar does because we know that blood sugar can go up and it can come crashing down, but that insulin can still be there for a long time. So the more we eat, the more frequently we eat, we're just really setting ourselves up for insulin resistance. And also another layer that's compounding this are these really toxic inflammatory vegetable oils. And when I say vegetable oils, the other sort of way to describe them are industrial seed oils. They're not made out of vegetables. I did not name them. I got a lot of flack on Instagram. They're like, why do you call them this? I'm like, I didn't make it up. So these are things like canola, cottonseed, corn oil, sunflower, safflower, soybean, rice bran, rapeseed, and grapeseed, and peanut. So those are about 10 different oils, except for the rapeseed and canola are the same. A lot of people in the US know it by canola, but now they're starting outside the US, they mostly call it rapeseed, but they are starting to put this on labels. I see it all over oat milks that they put rapeseed oil in things because people don't know it's canola oil. So they're trying to use this this
marketing
to trick people, be like, I don't know what this is, it must be fine, it's an oat milk, quote, oat milk must be so healthy for me, so they're trying to get away with this. But these fats actually cause insulin resistance and block your body from burning its own body fat. They essentially destroy the metabolism. They make you super inflamed. They increase your risk of getting free radicals and cancer. They're easily damaged. And so these damaged fats cause this oxidation in our body. Oxidation we think of as rusting. So that's why we need antioxidants. And so they're just causing damage all over the body. They mess up literally everything. They mess up your cholesterol levels. So getting these fats out of our body, out of our diets is super, super essential if we want to be able to improve our metabolism, burn fat for fuel, and get rid of insulin resistance. So there's my long answer.
Wow. No, that's awesome. You actually answered a lot of questions I was going to ask.
Perfect.
And it's crazy. Once you start getting some of those things out of your diet and say you have, because this has happened to me several times and I never knew why this was happening. But in the beginning, once I figured it out, it was like, oh yeah, that's why I was always foggy headed. I got out all those oils and actually there's a detoxification process that was happening. Every time I would work out, my whole, my skin, my neck, it would turn burning red. And I guess I was sweating out all of those toxic um,
Wow.
oils. I don't know. I didn't know it at the time. This was like probably 5 or 6 years ago when I started cleaning up my diet.
Mm-hmm.
But I was eating, I was eating tons of salads that had these oils and stuff, and I didn't know that's what it was at the time. But I was like,
Yeah.
why is like I'm eating healthy? Why am I having still these weird skin reactions?
Yeah. Wow.
Um,
That's a really great insight. And yeah, these oils can stay in our bodies for years. And so it
yeah.
can take people who are sort of like, I switched over my diet, I'm doing all these things right. It's like these oils have integrated themselves into our cell membranes. Every single cell in the body is lined with a membrane of fat and cholesterol. And
Hmm.
so we can see that we need to eat the right fats. And these are fats like from healthy raised animals. And so, like grass fed steaks and butter and
Yeah.
seafood and really good fats, like, and then the fats from fruits, like, so avocados, coconuts, olives. We don't think of those as fruits, which is a weird concept.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, and those kind of fats are the real good fats. And
Hmm.
those will keep our cell membranes nice and stable and flexible, as opposed to being really prone to all this damage. So, a lot of times, I was just reading something that was talking about how we're getting so much skin cancer because
Yeah.
these oils are now in our cell membranes, and that they're oxidizing, and so they're causing a really big problem in our skin on the cellular level. And when
Hmm.
you eat a lot of good saturated fats from healthy animals, you don't burn as much,
Yeah.
and it's really, really
I was
cool.
gonna mention that because I started to notice that 2 years ago I switched over to more. I started eating more meat based.
Hmm.
So I started eating actually a lot of these animal fats, and a lot more meat. And that's the first thing I noticed. I thought it was so weird because I've always been somebody who burns.
Yeah.
I'm from Washington State originally, and here in Colorado, you're kind of closer to the sun. And I always burned very easily, but a couple years ago, I started actually tanning for the first time in my life. I've never tanned.
Wow, that's great.
And I never wear sunscreen anymore. Of course, I'll have that first little burn, when summer comes a little bit.
Hmm.
But after that, I just tan, and
That's
and I
great.
and I know it's because I'm eating the saturated fats.
Yeah, that's really good. And there's so many there's so much like push for sunscreen out there. And not
Hmm.
only are these most sunscreens, especially the ones that you buy at the drugstore, just filled with chemicals, like go for a zinc based one, go for these like actual physical blockers of the sun,
Yeah.
not something that's a chemical based. It's so bad for our bodies. But we also are completely like, people are just smothered in sunscreen from the second they walk out of the house. It's like we need the sun. We
Yeah.
That's how we create vitamin D. And so if you put sunscreen on, sunscreen blocks all vitamin D production. So at least give yourself that like 20 to 30 minutes without sunscreen, like
Hmm.
flip on both sides or do like 20 minutes on each side. You're not going to burn right away. And then put your sunscreen on or go in the shade or something like that. But it's
Yeah.
really important to get yourself in the sun. And I mean, vitamin D is essential also for blood sugar regulation, and it creates nitric oxide, which is also important. So all of these things connect, everything connects. So it seems like the sunscreen topic is off topic, but the body is just a wonderful whole that works so synergistically. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's crazy that this stuff is actually all related, right?
Yes, I know. And I mean, I always go back to, what were our ancestors didn't have sunblock,
Yes, you're
and they
totally
didn't
right.
have they didn't have all this cancer and disease. And they were in the sun all day. Maybe they had to hide under a rock to avoid it,
Yeah, but
but
you develop, like, when you get tan, that's your body protecting itself from the sun. And there was a study on workers who were outside during the day, like roofing or something like that, and they
mhm.
were the people with the least amount of melanoma in a study.
Wow.
So the sun is actually protective of these things. So we need to fuel our body correctly so that everything can work better. So these
Yeah.
man-made toxic oils are if you do one thing from listening to this show, like read every ingredient of everything that you're putting in your body. And the most unfortunate thing about this is that, of course, yes, if you go to a store, you're going to see everything you turn over is going to have one of those oils in it. But it's really
Yeah.
hard to find. I mean, like 95% of things are going to
Yeah.
have these vegetable oils in them. And unfortunately, almost every single restaurant, except for like, what is it? Just Be Kitchen. Are you in Denver? In Colorado?
No, I'm more south.
Okay. But Just Be Kitchen is like the only place that I know that doesn't
Oh,
use
really?
like vegetable oils in their cooking.
Yeah.
So even the high-end restaurants, they're
Hmm.
using some blend of like soybean, canola, grapeseed, something like that. And you'll find the rare occasion where someone will do like tallow fries or something, and they'll cook
Yeah.
something in actual beef tallow. But every restaurant, just like most of the time, it's all these restaurants. It could be expensive or just McDonald's. They're using these oils in everything that they're cooking. And so
Yeah.
eating at home is also one of the most important things you can do for your overall health and blood sugar regulation, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I started having all these issues that I couldn't explain, and they were revolving around food, blood sugar, and digestion. And just reactions to food. That was, I had to start just making everything down to salad dressings. Everything I put, even the leafy greens I was eating, I started to be sensitive to the chemicals. I mean,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, it's a hard road, but once you figure out, okay, these things are what's causing me to have all these, issues, you make it a priority.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because your health is your priority.
Yeah, for sure. And if it isn't now, it will be soon, because if you lose your health, that's when people get this, they realize that, oh, that's right, my health needs to come first. And
Yeah,
as humans, we are, I didn't make a change until I had to, until I was
yeah.
so sick and tired of being sick and tired. And this is where we are as humans. We don't want to change if we don't have to. And
Hmm.
I heard someone say once that prevention isn't sexy. And that's such
Yeah,
a good sort of little motto, because it isn't. People are not generally going to make huge changes unless they're suffering. We make a lot more changes not to get something good, but to avoid pain. That is way more
hmm,
motivating to us as humans. And so we want to do something to avoid pain. But, you know, if you're struggling a little bit and not quite sure, I mean, go for it. Don't make our mistakes and only change when
yeah,
something's broken, right? So, all these things, like all this blood sugar stuff, don't wait until you have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. This is what they do in the mainstream medical community. They say, you come in, your blood sugar is 99. They say, oh, it's great. That's so great. First of all, disclaimer, it is not great. It's
no,
not great.
that would
And
not be
then
great for me.
exactly. And then it'll be like 102 or 105 or something, and they'll be like, let's just watch it. Imagine someone came to me wanting to work with me and paid me for my services, and I just said, let's just watch it. Let's just
So
watch
let's
it.
watch the accident before it
Yeah,
happens.
exactly.
As it
It's like,
happens.
it's so crazy that that is what they do. Like, you
Hmm.
are struggling, you go to your doctor, you say, I'm having all these symptoms, and they say, let's just watch it. And they do that because they have absolutely no tools to help you, because their only tool is a prescription pad. And there are
Yeah.
no drugs that are going to help you regulate your blood sugar and insulin levels until your blood sugar fasting gets up to 126, and that's when they'll prescribe you metformin. Maybe a little bit earlier than that, they'll give you metformin and other drugs to help reduce the blood sugar response, but they don't have any tools for prevention and wellness. And so I can't even tell you how many clients have come to me and they're like, I've done all these tests at my doctor. They say there's nothing wrong with me, but I know my blood sugar, I know it's my blood sugar. I feel really bad all the time, and I'm having all these symptoms, and my doctor just tells me, I'm going to give you an anxiety medication. And that, my friends, is major gaslighting. That is it breaks my heart because we always end up crying on these calls. Like I cry with my
Yeah.
clients because it's like, you don't deserve this. Just like my doctor told me, this is not reversible. This is permanent, and you have to take the pill and you have to lose weight. I'm like, what the heck is that? That just completely minimized my experience and gave me
Mhm.
absolutely no hope. And so if you are struggling with your blood sugar, if you think that you're having symptoms, you are. And you don't need a doctor to sort of validate that for you. Believe yourself. You are in
Mhm.
your body. You know what you feel like. And so, my best advice for you is get a blood sugar meter. Get like one of those finger prick meters. You can buy them on Amazon. You can go to Walgreens and buy one. I personally use the ForaCare 6 because it tests ketones and glucose. So you can get one of those meters. Keto Mojo is another good brand.
Yeah.
And so start just testing your blood sugar at home and seeing what it's doing. The fasting blood sugar is a good number to know, but also like if you're feeling shaky, if you're feeling dizzy, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling irritable, check your blood sugar, know what it's doing, and start to get a hold of like what is trending in my body. Like, what do I feel like? What happens after I eat X meal? What happens if I eat the same meal, but I had a really terrible sleep? Or what happens if I was super active that day and then that happened? So many people are not able to sort of understand their body until they sort of get the numbers from the blood sugar meter. And then all of a sudden, their symptoms start to make sense. And this getting in tune with your body is literally the best thing you can do because
Mhm.
you're understanding our body talks to us in symptoms. And so if we don't understand the symptoms, we can't interpret it. We need to be able to speak the language of our body. And so I know that if I were like, shaky and lightheaded, we have similar blood sugar manifestation symptoms. Not everyone
Yeah.
gets shaky like that or something, but if I were to feel like that, I'd be like, whoa, am I having a blood sugar reaction? And chances are I would be, because that's what my body does. Now that I've healed my metabolism and I'm metabolically flexible and I'm not a sugar burner anymore, I don't have these crashes. If I were shaky, it would probably be from something else, like, oh, I probably had too much caffeine and it's
Mhm.
causing me to shake, or like some sort of like pesticides or something like that. So now I'm able to know what all these symptoms are for my body, and that way I can help it better. And so you need to put on your own white coat and like do the investigations, do the experiments, learn about your body, and testing your blood sugar is one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I did that a few years ago because I wanted to figure it out, because every time I went to I went to the doctor, they tested me for everything under the sun. Of course, nothing came
Mm-hmm.
up.
Yep.
Nothing came up positive. They even tested me for AIDS and herpes.
Oh my
um
gosh, you poor thing.
I know. And then, I didn't, and I never had diabetes, but I always had these issues since I was a kid, really.
Yeah.
And then, I started just experimenting, like you said. And when I was trying to figure it out, I eliminated all these things. And then I would try and incorporate things. I tried, even sweet potatoes, because at the time, I
Paleo is
was
all the
really into
rage.
paleo, and I cannot do sweet potatoes. I can't do potatoes at all.
Me either.
But I actually tested it, and yeah, my blood sugar would spike. And that's what I was using for a tool. I have a keto mojo. So I
Okay.
got one of those, and I would test, because I noticed that my heart rate would, like you said, is different for everybody. But I just get really sweaty. My heart rate would go up, and I'd start feeling all this brain fog and all this stuff. And yeah, lo and behold, my blood sugar would be like in the hundreds. Like, I think like it got up to 120 with
Oh
some
wow.
foods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what kind of things that we can do, because we talked about kind of all the signs and symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation, and what are some of the tools that we can use to reverse
Yeah.
some of
So
it?
just sort of brushing back, we talked about like this in terms of the symptoms. We talked
Hmm.
about a lot of those early symptoms of blood sugar stuff, but some people, like I mentioned before, they will like intuitively snack, or they think like, I'm just a person who needs carbs and sugar, right? Like you said.
Yeah.
And this is because we are such sugar burners. And then there's also some other sort of consequences of having blood sugar issues. So those are more the earlier signs, but those might actually go away and someone may have not noticed them. And then it sort of comes to this place where it's a little bit longer term issues. So things like weight loss resistance, if you describe yourself as having like a slow metabolism, if you have mood swings, energy crashes, things like migraines or any sort of hormone imbalances. And then as the insulin resistance and blood sugar regulation gets worse, you'll see things like fatty liver, infertility, obesity, depression, anxiety, prediabetes or diabetes, joint issues, worsening fatigue, slow healing, premature aging, failing memory. Alzheimer's is being called type 3 diabetes. Your cholesterol numbers will be off. And then, of course, your blood sugar and A1C numbers may start to show these things too. A1C is not my favorite test, although it can be helpful to compare your metric over time. But A1C is a really common test people will get. And this is an average of your blood sugar over the last 3 months. So if your blood sugar goes really high and then really low and really high, really low all day, which is really stressful for the body, and this is what causes those blood sugar issues, then your average is going to be perfect. So it's going to be, the doctor is going to be like, oh no, you have no problem, it's perfect. And so, but you're not going to feel perfect. And so these blood sugar issues actually happen because of these blood sugar swings. And so the highs and the lows, and so this is what we really want to avoid. And so the name of the game is keeping our blood sugar in a tightly controlled range. And that's what we mean when we say like balanced blood sugar. It's just going up a little bit and down a little bit, just like it's almost not even moving that much at all. And that is going to lead you to feel much more energy, stable energy throughout the day, stable moods. And it's going to help with feeling all those good feelings that we want to feel. Like our immune system will worsen if it's going up and down. Our adrenals will become fatigued if it's going up and down. So we want this nice, tightly controlled blood sugar. So how do we do that? So number one, we need to stop spiking our blood sugar. So that is the first thing. And so how do we do that? What spikes our blood sugar? Things like refined sugar and flour are like number one. Those things will really spike you. So any sort of highly processed foods, anything made with flour, people are like, really, even bread? Yes, bread. Things, and then the next category of things that would spike you, so anything with sugar in it, so this could be a drink or any sort of like pastry or anything made out of sugar, candy. And then we would have to go to the next thing, sort of category of things that spike you. And we would say things like grains. So grains are things like rice and oats and wheat and millet and barley and rye and all those things. And the bran on it, like if it's whole wheat, it really doesn't make that much of a difference with your blood sugar, maybe only like 2 or 3 points or up to 5 points of difference. So that isn't saving you. And that's a big misconception that, oh, the whole wheat, the brown stuff is so much better for me. It's really not. It has a handful more nutrients, like a few more, maybe vitamins and minerals, but there's so many anti-nutrients actually on the bran of these grains that you're probably not getting them anyway. And they're actually probably more irritating for your gut. So not a good choice, not a really healthy food. They're very much touted in our society to be like so healthy and so important, and they're really not. And I'm willing to bet that you will feel 1,000 times better by taking out all of these grains. And then the next category of things that will spike you, unfortunately, and this is where I was in that paleo camp, are the things like starchy vegetables and fruit. And so we naturally think like, oh, but this is natural sugar, this is healthy sugar. There's no such thing as healthy sugar, really. It's like an oxymoron. And so it's not terrible. Like if you're going to have carbohydrates, we want them to come from more natural sources over a candy bar, right? Because they do come with some nutrients packaged within them. And these nutrients help you to be able to process the sugar that's in them. So for example, let's go to the sweet potato. We need things like magnesium, B vitamins, zinc, chromium, and some other nutrients in order to process the glucose that's in foods. When you eat a candy bar, it doesn't come with those nutrients. So we're actually depleting our nutrients. It's sort of making us nutritionally deprived and deficient because we're eating sugar without those nutrients in them. At least with the sweet potato example, it already comes with the B vitamins, the magnesium, the zinc, the chromium, etc. And so at least we're not depleting our bodies. But most people, it's fair to say, if we make this sweeping generalization, most people have been overeating carbohydrates for way too long and would do better without a lot of carbohydrates for at least a period of time so the body can heal. And so when we take out these groups of foods, we can also have them in really small amounts, right? So we just don't want to spike our blood sugar a lot. So we can have a little potential space to add in a little bit of something. So maybe like an eighth of a cup of some like butternut squash, maybe at the end of a meal or something like that. But some people, not even that. So you need to sort of decide where you're at. I personally did better with taking out all these sources of carbs for a period of time, allowing my body to heal, getting rid of those sugar cravings. Because even if I'd have some like raspberries, which ended up having, let's say, like 2 grams of carbs, like almost no sugar, almost no carbs, negligible. If I had raspberries with my breakfast, for example, all day I'd be thinking about sugar and fruit. I would just be craving it. And so it's not only the blood sugar number that matters, it's also what's going on in your head. What are your symptoms? So getting out these foods for a period of time, including these artificial sweeteners and non-nutritive sweeteners, even stevia. Everyone asks me, even stevia. Take these things out. They are making you eat more of a food that doesn't naturally taste that way. They are hijacking your palate. They can raise insulin because your body thinks that you're getting sugar. They can, some of them can negatively impact your gut bacteria. And I had a client who was like, Dani, I don't know what's happening, but I am just starving. I don't know why. Like, she's like, I feel like I could eat a whole house. And I was like, are you having electrolyte drinks that have like stevia and sweeteners in them? She's like, yeah, I am. That's the electrolytes that I'm using. I go, take those out. She said literally that same day after taking them out, she stopped having that starving feeling. And I've had that before.
Me too.
When I drink those electrolyte drinks, I chug them. Like, I'm like, where is this coming from? They are just, again, like, we want to get rid of these hyper palatable foods. And just because it's keto, just because it's blood sugar friendly, doesn't mean it's a good option for us. So it could be a really good option, like, hey, I've been doing amazing and I've met all my goals and I want to have a birthday something and I want to use these sweeteners in my birthday treat. Live your life, but on the regular, if you're trying to meet goals, if you're trying to make a change, if you're trying to feel better, it might be a really good thing to pull out of your diet. So we talked about removing flour, sugar, grains, getting rid of like those dense sources of carbohydrates. Even legumes have a ton of carbohydrates in them, like things like beans. And I, of course, and as you know, come from this paleo camp. And so I'm like, get the beans, I get the legumes out, lots of anti-nutrients, not as much protein as you think. And it comes with so many carbs. So not a really great choice for blood sugar regulation. So what do we have left? We have really good meats and fish and poultry and eggs and vegetables and fats. And we want to make plates that are filled with those things. And the biggest mistake I see people make when they try to improve their blood sugar and go low carb is that they'll have a meal that looks like this: chicken breast, vegetables, maybe some seasoning. And I'm like, where's the fat? Like, that is the biggest thing that people are missing, because they are eating, yes, they're eating a low carbohydrate food, but we're trying to run our body on fats now instead of sugar. And so if we don't add fats to our meal, we're lowering the carbs, but now we're lowering our fuel source that we have, but we're not giving ourselves another alternative fuel. So many people, and this is especially at the beginning of your journey, when you're trying to teach your body, hey, this is fat, this is a fuel, learn to use it, learn to love it. And so if we're not increasing our fats, we're going to feel tired. We're going to still have carb cravings. We're going to probably still be spiking our blood sugar, because if you have a bunch of lean protein with no fat on it, it's going to spike your sugar. So even tested on a blood sugar meter, you will see that like this lovely chicken breast that you think is like super healthy, that it's not your fault. You've been told that,
Yeah.
right? So they tell us eat this chicken breast and have vegetables and it's so healthy. You're going
Mhm.
to feel so not satiated and your body is going to feel starving, and then it's going to make you crave things, and then you're going to fall off the wagon and think that you're doing something wrong, that you don't have enough willpower, and it's all because you just didn't add enough fat. So I like to say that a rule of thumb is to add about 3 to 4 servings of fat at a meal to start out with. So cooking your food in fat doesn't really even count unless it's like a ton. But like, yes, put, fat in the pan. When you cook, use fats that are solid at room temperature because these are much more stable. So things like butter and coconut oil. Use the liquid fats for like cold uses. So drizzle that on top of your vegetables. So start off with a fattier cut of meat. This is a really good way to get more fats in. So choose the chicken thigh with the skin on as opposed to
Yeah.
the chicken breast. Choose salmon over mahi. Choose like a ribeye over a filet mignon. So choose the fatty cuts of meat. Add butter to the top. You will be thanking me. It's delicious.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yes. Cook your veggies and then drizzle some olive oil on top of them, or more butter. That would
Mhm.
be my go-to. Have the fatty fruits. So have some coconut slices, have some olives, have some avocado, have
Mhm.
only up to a handful of nuts and seeds a day. I see people overdoing that all the time.
Yeah.
But, having a few of those might not be bad for you, might help a little bit. And then just eating these good animal fats, add extra fats to your meal. Egg yolks are filled with really good fats. Fish eggs like salmon roe, really good omega-3 fats. Like add it, eat it by the spoonful and swallow them like pills. I don't like the
Yeah.
taste of them. You don't need to cook with them. But like getting these fats into your diet are going to really help you. And it's a lot of fat. I'm sorry, it's enough fat when you're like, is it really this much fat? This much fat makes me feel uncomfortable. That's how
Mhm.
much fat
Yeah.
you need when you start out.
Yeah, your body will definitely tell you, like, use the biofeedback, you know. Um,
Yeah, you'll be
I know
hungry
I
before you
had to
even
work
start.
my way up with the fat because yeah, in the beginning I didn't know about paleo or keto, you know, because this was like 2015, for me anyway. And I wasn't eating any fat.
Mm-hmm.
It was all like mostly vegetables and chicken, like you said. And I was like constantly starving. I was constantly hungry all the time. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, and I know we need to kind of wind down here.
Mm-hmm.
um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe the role that digestion plays with maybe some of our hormone signaling and our, the hunger. Um, because I know I was dealing with a lot of digestive issues. And once I started to heal my gut, it seemed like all of these sugar cravings, for me anyway, they started to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and once I started adding a lot of more of the protein and the fat, for me anyway, that is really what helped all of my sugar cravings, all the addictions for me went away. So maybe you can go into a little bit about that.
Sure. So a lot of people think of digestion as like, oh, my gut bacteria, and I went to the bathroom today or can't go to the bathroom very easily. Or like I take a probiotic so my digestion is fine. I hear that all the time. But our
Yeah.
digestion starts in the brain. We need to be in a nice rest and digest parasympathetic state in order for our digestion to even turn on. When we're stressed in a sympathetic fight or flight state, our body stops producing stomach acid, stops producing bile, stops producing saliva, stops moving our intestines. So we just shut this whole process down. So step one is get in a nice rest and digest state when you're eating. I can't emphasize this more. This is a free thing, but this is the hardest thing to do because taking a supplement is much easier, right? But like calming down and taking a few deep breaths before our meals and sitting That's way harder. I am like
Mhm.
classic stand and eat all the time person. And so I am working so hard on actually sitting and breathing. This is the hardest thing for me, for sure. And then the
Yeah.
other thing is chewing our food.
Mhm.
There's digestive enzymes in our saliva, and we need to mechanically break down the food. Think about it like this. We have a huge chunk of steak. This steak needs to become us. So it doesn't, we don't have steak particles on our body. It needs to get broken down to these microscopic level. So if we're chewing like 5 times and swallowing, our stomach has so much work to do to break this down. And then often digestion is incomplete. Anytime we are not breaking down our food to the proper size molecules, we are causing something inflammatory to happen in our body. The body is going to respond with an immune reaction and just inflame because it thinks that something is wrong. And then that inflammation, what happens in the gut, doesn't stay in the gut because we have a bloodstream. And so now all this inflammation is going to travel throughout the body in our bloodstream and hit us where we are most susceptible. So for me, it's allergies, asthma, sinus, immune stuff. For other people, it's joint pain. Other people, it's migraines. Other people, it's stomach pains and IBS. So this is where we get that variation, but it's the same root cause. So
Mhm.
other things that can sort of block our body from digesting well is not having enough stomach acid. So we talked about stress being an issue. If you've ever been on a plant-based diet, you're not getting a lot of zinc or B12. Those are things that are necessary to make stomach acid to begin with. And most of us are just deficient. Age can decrease stomach acid. Infections like H. pylori can decrease stomach acid. And if you have heartburn, if you're like, no, I have way too much stomach acid, 90% chance that it's way too little stomach acid. Most people
Yeah.
don't make too much. So supporting your stomach acid and working with someone to help you do this is really important. You can't just take like one HCl tablet and be like, oh, this is fine. There's actually a
Yeah.
way to like dose yourself up and down. And
Mhm.
then if we don't have enough stomach acid, the food will kind of sit in our stomach. It might like be really slow to digest, feel like a rock, cause you to burp, cause you to have hiccups, cause upper GI bloating,
Mhm.
gas, discomfort, and you might lose your taste for meat because stomach acid activates this digestive enzyme called pepsin, which breaks down proteins. And so, if you don't have enough stomach acid, you might just naturally be averse to eating meat. And that's
Yeah.
because you know you can't digest it. So, then the pancreatic enzymes won't get triggered. That will further impact things. And then, if we've had a history of a low fat diet, either a plant-based diet or a low-fat diet. I'm a product of
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s, so
Me
I
too.
definitely have eaten
I
real
think
low fat.
everybody has had a low fat diet.
Yeah, exactly. So when that happens, our bile, which is supposed to be like dish soap and emulsify fats, it
Mhm.
gets thick and stagnant and sludgy, and it can't do its job. And so we can develop issues with our gallbladder, and it just won't work as well. And so we can't digest fats. And so a lot of people jump to doing, they're like, okay, I'm going to do keto and I'm going to increase my fats and increase my proteins and decrease my carbs. And then boom, digestive issues happen, and this
Yeah.
is really common. And so I would I would advise anyone who's going through any of these issues to really work with someone who can help them improve your digestive function. And sometimes we need to supplement to sort of help the body do what it does. And then we
Mhm.
work off those supplements once the body's able to do it on its own. But this digestion is the number one healing priority of the body. It has to come first because if we can't digest fats, guess what we can't do? Stabilize our blood sugar because we
Yeah.
need to stabilize our blood sugar with fat. And so they really impact each other. And if we're eating foods we're sensitive to, all of this is going to lead to, if we're not digesting well, all of this leads to inflammation in the small intestine. And when we think about the small intestine, we want to think absorption. That's where we absorb all our nutrients. So if by the time everything gets there, it's not broken down, we haven't chewed enough, we don't have enough stomach acid, so we have hunks of food. We have, I mean, stomach acid also disinfects the stomach. So now we have all these pathogens and things that didn't get disinfected. We're a mess. And now things get to our gut and we have all these issues. We can develop leaky gut. And that's when we're really prone to getting autoimmunity. We're prone to allergies and all these other things, worsening food sensitivities. And it just causes issues all down the chain until we get to the large intestine. Now we have an imbalance of good and bad bacteria because now all these bad guys can proliferate and grow. This is a big problem. And so people will try to take a probiotic to fix the gut bacteria, but you can see now that all these issues up top need to be addressed first. So digestion is a hard thing to fix on your own. And I wouldn't have known anything about it had I not been to nutrition school, where we did learn how to address it. And so it's a really, really wonderful thing. If you are struggling, if you're like, I've done every diet, I've done keto and carnivore, I can't cut out any more foods. If you're like on this train of like, this food's affecting me and this one is, and this one is, if you take out food sensitivities without healing the gut and fixing your digestion and all these underlying issues, you're just going to keep developing more food sensitivities. So then all of a sudden you're just going to be left with beef and water and you're like, well, I just can't eat anything. And so I see people in this trap all the time. So if this is you, let me know. I would love to help.
Has been me. You're speaking my language. Yeah. Was, I think it was almost 2 years ago. Yeah. I was down to lettuce was hurting my gut. Yeah. And I developed SIBO and, all this stuff. So I did the carnivore diet for a year. And then I started adding some fermented foods first back in, because that's all I could just digest. But and now, and even after doing the carnivore diet, I still was having issues. So, it's taken me a long time to realize what you just said. But if I'd known, I could work with somebody like you, a long time ago, that probably would have saved me a lot of years of suffering, Yeah, because I've been trying to handle this on my own for like 6 years now. But working with somebody definitely would help, because you know the right tests, and the right, things to look for, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And people say like, what do you mean? Like, work with someone? Like, someone said to me, what are you going to tell me to do besides eat healthier and work out more? I'm like, oh my gosh, so many things. Like, I can't even begin. Like, my consults have moved from like 60 minutes to 75 minutes. Yesterday I had a 90-minute. There's so much to say. There's so many things to talk about and so many different areas that you don't think to look at if you're just not trained for that. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing to work with someone and to, it's not just about like eat healthier and move more. Not at all.
Yeah. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. Thank you so much for coming on here, and you have been such a wealth of knowledge. I just love talking to you.
Oh, thank you.
And is there any lasting comments you want to make or anything you want to say, like, to close this out?
I just wanted to say that no matter where you are on that spectrum of diabetes, every case of type 2 diabetes, and then even less like reactive hypoglycemia, prediabetes, blood sugar dysregulation, these are all reversible. So don't let anyone tell you they're not. And same thing with PCOS, it is reversible. This is like, you are going to unlock the answers for yourself, and you need to get help from someone who knows how to help you. If you can't do it on your own, like I spent 6 years trying to heal myself. It wasn't until I went to nutrition school that it all clicked into place. And then even now, like I have to do this testing on myself. I have food sensitivity testing and gut testing. Like I just can't figure it out. You can't guess what's in the intestines. You just can't guess that kind of stuff. So prioritizing, saving certain money and like shifting your priorities around. Maybe I won't go out to eat, for a few months, and I'm going to take that money and heal my body. There's like, we spend all this money. If our car doesn't work, we have to do upkeep on our car. Like you have to spend it, right? Because you need to get from place to place. And we don't do that with our body that we live inside of. And so you have the tools to heal your body, work with someone who can help you, because you only get one of these. And so we really want to prioritize it, and don't let a doctor like gaslight you into thinking that you're crazy, that there's something wrong with you. I believe you. I know, I hear you, and your body's not broken. It's working with you. So that's my message of hope.
No, that's awesome. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I might be calling you to help me.
I'm happy to help.
So, yes, yeah, and where can people find you? I know where I found you was online on Instagram, but yeah, where can people find you if they want to work with you, or they just want some good education that you put out there?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram. My handle is Danielle Hamilton Health. That's Danielle. I'm sure it's going to be written where they they can see the podcast. And my
Yeah.
website as well is daniellehamiltonhealth.com. And then if you liked listening to me talk and want to hear more of that, I talk a lot. I have a podcast called
Yeah.
Unlock the Sugar Shackles. So you could catch me on the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yes, I have listened. I love
Oh,
your
thank you.
podcast. It is so informational. Lots of good stuff in there. I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Thanks, Rosa.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Dani. I'll definitely have to have you back on the show at some point and talk about more stuff, because there was a lot of more questions I had for you. But I'll save that for another time.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, thank you.